WVW Broadcast Network is pleased to present The Pry Report with Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. Dr. Pry was an intelligence officer with the Central Intelligence Agency and was responsible for analyzing Soviet and Russian nuclear strategy, operational plans, military doctrine, threat perceptions, and developing U.S. paradigms for strategic warning. Dr. Pry is Executive Director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, a congressional advisory board dedicated to achieving protection of the United States from electromagnetic pulse, cyber warfare, mass destruction terrorism, and other threats to civilian critical infrastructures. Dr. Pry has also served on the staffs of several congressional commissions. Due to his expertise, he's been a guest on numerous national and international radio and television programs, such as Life, Liberty, and Levin, with host Mark Levin on the Fox News Channel, Lou Dobbs Tonight on Fox Business, and the BBC made his book War Scare into a 2-hour TV documentary, and his book Electric Armageddon was the basis for a TV documentary by National Geographic. Dr. Pry has written numerous books on national security that include Blackout Wars, Apocalypse Unknown, Electric Armageddon, and War Scare, Russia and America on the Nuclear Brink. And now, here is your host, Dr. Peter Pry.
Welcome to another edition of the Pry Report, where we will always tell you the facts and the truth, where we will discuss things that you're not going to hear from the liberal mainstream media, or even from conservative channels like Fox News, where we'll give you views that are considered politically incorrect in Greater Washington, views that are believed by a lot of analysts, but that are too unpopular for them to say out loud. The topic today is denuclearizing North Korea, the military options. The military options. We do have military options for denuclearizing North Korea, and we need to exercise those military options before it's too late. North Korea is never going to give up its nuclear weapons through the negotiation process, and we can't afford to try living with a nuclear-armed North Korea. That's my bottom line. Kim Jong-un is a psychopath and a mass murderer, and sooner or later, he will use nuclear weapons against us if he's allowed to keep them. After North Korea's H-bomb test in September 2017, and yes, by the way, North Korea does have the H-bomb. When they conducted that test in September 2017, a lot of Obama holdovers in our dim-witted intelligence community wanted to contend, well, maybe they don't have an H-bomb. Maybe it's just a very powerful atomic bomb. They're so used to burying their heads in the sand to evade facing the truth and looking at real threats that they were willing to try to come up with complex technological arguments to convince themselves that North Korea doesn't have an H-bomb. And one of those was, well, what was the yield of that H-bomb back in 2017? You know, analysts who didn't want to face the fact that North Korea had the H-bomb wanted to believe that the yield was really around 50 to 70 kilotons, which is still at least 5 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. But it's plausible that that could be a very powerful H-bomb. The upper end of the estimate from seismic signals was that the yield of the North Korean bomb tested in September 2017 might have been 250 kilotons. You know, even that could possibly be an extremely powerful H-bomb. I think the theoretical upper limit for an atomic bomb is 500 kilotons. So it's conceivable that that 250 kiloton yield might have been a very powerful atomic bomb. But that is so unlikely, you know, because it would have required the North Koreans to have a lot more atomic bomb material than we have heretofore been crediting them with, that they would have been willing to waste, you know, because that's a very inefficient kind of a design, a 500 kiloton atomic bomb in an atomic bomb test. Most reasonable analysts are willing to concede that if if the upper yield was correct, 250 kilotons, then it was probably a thermonuclear H-bomb of some sort. And recently, within the past couple of weeks, another independent estimate by one of the best groups that follows seismic estimates of nuclear weapons tests, concluded that the highest estimated range for North Korea's H-bomb test is correct, 250 kilotons. That would basically make it an H-bomb. And we have other reasons for thinking it was an H-bomb, by the way. We know, and this is all unclassified, although, again, not widely available in the mainstream media. They don't like to report, some of this bad news. But there has been evidence. We know the North Koreans manufacture tritium, and we've detected traces of tritium from these tests. And tritium is an H-bomb fuel. That's the kind of fuel that's used in the more sophisticated H-bomb designs. And last but not least, the North Koreans themselves declared it to be an H-bomb. And they even showed a picture of the device. And it wasn't just the device, it was actually a warhead. They showed a H-bomb that had been miniaturized to fit on an ICBM. In intelligence information leaked to the Washington Post, the intelligence community pretty drastically changed its estimate of the North Korean nuclear weapons program after the summer of 2017, concluding that North Korea probably had ICBMs that could reach any city in the United States, and that they could be armed, they're probably armed with H-bombs. And that is a significant escalation in the threat, because atomic bombs, such as destroyed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, are a lot less powerful than H-bombs. And one more bit of bad news about this. We still might be underestimating the North Korean nuclear weapons capability, because we assume that test, the 250 kiloton test, we assume that was not a decoupled test, that the North Koreans basically conducted the test in the way we do, where they drop the bomb down into a tunnel where it's a pretty tight fit, so that the shock wave from the exploding weapon couples well into the soil geology. And that creates a strong seismic signal that gives you an accurate reading of what the weapon yield is. But you can do something called decoupling, which is simple to do. The North Koreans might well have done this with their H-bomb test, and tested the bomb in a tunnel, a big open tunnel, so that there's an air gap between the bomb and the sides of the tunnel, a big air gap. This dampens the shock wave, and it dampens the seismic signal, so that you get a much lower reading. And you can actually reduce by tenfold the seismic signal, so the bomb can be 10 times more powerful than the reading that you get from the seismic signals. If the North Koreans did that, instead of being 250 kilotons, the actual yield of the test could be 2,500 kilotons, or 2.5 megatons, and that is unambiguously in hydrogen bomb range. Unambiguously. You can only get that kind of a yield for sure with a hydrogen bomb. Interestingly, when the test was conducted in 2017, there was a secondary seismic signal that came out that was interpreted by most experts as a collapsing tunnel, that the test tunnel actually collapsed. Now, nobody wanted to draw the obvious inference from that, which is that it was a decoupled test, that they tested inside a cavern, and the cavern collapsed after the test, which means that it would be a decoupled test, and so the yield of their weapon was much higher. So we might be facing a North Korea that's armed with ICBMs that are carrying hydrogen bombs that might even be in the megaton range. Now, I wrote an article immediately after the North Korean H-bomb tests in September that was published in the Washington Times on September 26, 2017, titled "Disarming Nuclear North Korea." Disarming Nuclear North Korea. Washington Times, September 26, 2017. And in this article, I described some possible military options using conventional non-nuclear surgical strikes, using conventional weapons only, to denuclearize North Korea quickly while minimizing escalatory risks. decades of failed talks and 2 failed nuclear summits where President Trump has met personally with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, 2 failed nuclear summits, have proved once again that North Korea will not denuclearize peacefully. Dictator Kim Jong-un's game is to buy time through pretend negotiations to build enough intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, so a nuclear-armed North Korea can have a mutual assured destruction relationship with the United States, and that will become irreversible, so that we will have to learn to live with a nuclear-armed North Korea. That's what his game is. Economic sanctions designed to pressure North Korea's denuclearization peacefully never worked. They didn't work during the Clinton administration, they didn't work during the Bush administration, they didn't work during the Obama administration. They're not working now. They're not going to work during the Trump administration, despite the optimism of the Department of State. According to a recent United Nations report obtained by the Associated Press and leaked in the United Kingdom's Guardian newspaper on March 11, 2019, I'm quoting from that report, United Nations experts are investigating possible violations of UN sanctions on North Korea in about 20 countries. 20 countries have been violating the sanctions. 20 countries have been violating these sanctions, from alleged clandestine nuclear procurement in China to arms brokering in Syria and military cooperation with Iran, Libya, and Sudan. These are just 5 of the countries that have been breaking the sanctions. The expert panel's 66-page report to the Security Council also detailed the appearance in North Korea of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, Mercedes-Benz limousines, and a Lexus LX 570 all-wheel drives in violation of a ban on luxury goods. So even the ban on luxury goods isn't working. You know, Kim Jong-un and his elites are getting their Rolls-Royces and Mercedes-Benz limousines and Lexus LX 570 all-wheel drives. If the ban on luxury goods isn't working, why would one suppose that the more technical bans on getting prohibited technologies are working? It should be fairly easy to enforce a ban on getting Rolls-Royce Phantom limousines, right? And they can't even do that. And it noted a trend in North Korea's evasion of financial sanctions by using cyber attacks to, quote, illegally force the transfer of funds from financial institutions and cryptocurrency exchanges. Now let me add another, dirty little secret that our government doesn't like to talk about why economic sanctions aren't working against North Korea. And really they'll never work. That's because North Korea is one of the most sophisticated and successful counterfeiters of American currency in the world. You may have noticed that the dollar bills in your pocket, if you look at the more recent dollar bills, they look like funny money. They've got different colors on them and different kind of fibers going through the dollars. You know, the proof that sanctions, economic sanctions against North Korea won't work and haven't been working is right in your wallet in the shape of that money. The reason the Treasury Department, our Treasury Department, has started printing our dollars, to look different like that is because the North Koreans have been so successful in counterfeiting American money. In desperation, we've tried to change the way our money looks. And other countries around the world have done that too, because the North Koreans are counterfeiting their money too. Whenever the North Korean regime needs money, it can just run those printing presses. And then it can sell that money to international organized crime. Their counterfeit money is so good that they actually get 50 cents on the dollar for their money. And they can use the money directly, through their embassies around the world to buy goods and services that they need and prohibited technologies that they need. Moreover, according to the UN report, quote, North Korea's nuclear and missile programs remained intact, and its leaders were dispersing missile assembly and testing facilities to prevent decapitation strikes. So the North Koreans, anticipating the possibility that the United States might strike them militarily, have been hiding their missiles and their production facilities, dispersing them to try to protect them against our strikes. So we're running out of time for a military solution against North Korea. We need to act sooner rather than later to prevent them from protecting their missile program. And if they were sincere about denuclearization, and there was great hope for that, why would they be trying to hide these assets and protect them from military strikes in the first place? Obviously, they don't plan to give up their nuclear program. And we know that they're continuing to manufacture missiles and nuclear weapons at the same time that they're talking to us about denuclearization, supposedly. The White House should be alarmed. North Korea is now reneging on dismantlement of their Suhai satellite launch facility. They're rebuilding Sohai to orbit satellites, possibly nuclear-armed for EMP attack. For those of us who understand the EMP threat, like on the Congressional EMP Commission, their rebuilding of the Sohai satellite launch facility is sending a clear signal that they're not sincere and interested in denuclearization. It's basically a threat to us, that they retain a capability to do an EMP attack by satellite. They've already got two possibly nuclear-armed satellites orbiting over the United States, the KMS-3 and the KMS-4. We don't know if they're nuclear-armed, but there's a real possibility that they are for a surprise nuclear EMP attack. At minimum, those satellites represent practice for doing nuclear EMP attacks. They could also be nuclear-armed to pose an EMP threat against us on a daily basis. The Congressional EMP Commission has warned that these two North Korean satellites presently orbit over the U.S., and that if nuclear-armed, they could black out North America, posing potentially the single greatest nuclear threat from North Korea. The EMP Commission recommends shooting down these satellites over uninhabited regions. The U.S. has intercepted satellites before in the 1980s and is significantly more capable of anti-satellite operations today. These satellites represent an existential threat to the United States and North America. If a nuclear EMP attack happened that shut down the national electric grid for 1 year, we could lose 90% of our population. 9 of 10 Americans could die from starvation, disease, and societal collapse, just as a result of an EMP attack from one nuclear-armed satellite. Those satellites represent a nuclear ace in the hole for North Korea. They ought to be taken out. Even if they're just for practice, they ought to be taken out. Destruction of North Korea's 2 satellites would be the least escalatory military option available to us, as it would not entail striking North Korea's homeland, yet it would eliminate the greatest potential nuclear threat to the United States. Downing North Korea's satellites alone, even if we only did that, it's one of the smallest and most easily executed military operations, and it might be enough to bring about a diplomatic solution. For the first time, the U.S. would be striking against the North Korean nuclear threat, proving to Pyongyang, China, and Russia that the United States is serious and determined to eliminate and denuclearize North Korea, forcefully if necessary. See, in administration after administration, during the Clinton administration, during the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and yes, even under President Trump's administration, it's all been talk. It's all been threats and warnings that we will not tolerate a nuclear-armed North Korea. But no actions except economic sanctions. No actions except begging China and Russia to pressure North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. If the United States shot down those satellites, it would send a message that yes, we are willing to use military force. And this would be the safest, least escalatory option for us to do. It could change the whole strategic calculus of China, Russia, and North Korea about the risk to North Korea of retaining their nuclear arsenal. And it could, by demonstrating that we're serious and willing to use military force, make North Korea serious about being willing to trade that force for diplomatic and economic advantages. Even so, I think it unlikely, if we took out the satellites, that North Korea would be willing to give up that nuclear arsenal. So another military option, more ambitious and riskier, would destroy North Korea's 2 satellites. They've got somewhere between 12 and 20 intercontinental ballistic missiles now. Destroy those. They've got 30 to 50 intermediate range ballistic missiles that can reach U.S. territories in the Pacific. Destroy those. They've got 60 mostly non-nuclear bombers. Destroy those. They've got 1 Sinpo missile submarine that's potentially nuclear armed. Destroy that. And they've got 12 retired Gulf missile submarines that were sold to them by Russia. Destroy those. The Sohae satellite launcher and Yongbyon nuclear complex, including a nearby clandestine uranium enrichment facility, should also be destroyed in this more ambitious nuclear military scenario I'm describing that involves non-nuclear conventional weapons to disarm nuclear North Korea. The tunnels can become graveyards for North Korean missiles by bombing their entrances. You know, a lot of people who object and say, well, the military option can't work because their ICBMs are mobile and are hidden in tunnels. We can take out those tunnel entrances with conventional weapons that are specifically designed for destroying tunnels and turn them into graveyards for those North Korean missiles. North Korean air defenses are antiquated, ineffective, and can be suppressed non-lethally with electronic countermeasures. Aegis guided missile cruisers and other anti-missile defenses can be surged to intercept any launched missiles. All of this, fewer than 150 targets, could probably be destroyed by 3 aircraft carriers and global strike forces using conventional weapons in just a few hours. Any surviving or future new ICBMs or intermediate-range ballistic missiles should be destroyed on site. This campaign would eliminate the North Korean nuclear missile threat to North America and to U.S. territories in the Pacific, and it would severely cripple North Korea's nuclear program. Another military option, even more ambitious and even riskier, would do all of the above and destroy North Korea's almost entirely non-nuclear 300 to 450 medium-range ballistic missiles and destroy their 600 to 800 short-range ballistic missiles. This would eliminate Pyongyang's nuclear threat to Japan and South Korea, but would probably require days to execute and entail much higher escalatory risks. Striking quickly, surgically, against the smallest number of targets is least likely to be misconstrued as attempting to destroy the North Korean regime in an all-out war, and therefore least likely to result in North Korean escalation using nuclear or other weapons of mass destruction. Psychopaths like Kim Jong-un have been attacked and defeated without their using weapons of mass destruction. For example, Adolf Hitler during World War II refrained from using tapetum and sarin nerve gas, fearing Allied retaliation, even though Nazi Germany had a monopoly. We didn't know that they had invented tapetum and sarin nerve gas. We didn't have nerve gas on our side, just mustard gas and other World War I type gases. But even Adolf Hitler didn't escalate to using these things during World War II, even when he was on the verge of being destroyed and his regime falling in his Führer bunker. Iraq's Saddam Hussein did not retaliate for Israel's destruction of his Asyric nuclear reactor in 1981, nor did he launch chemical and biological missiles during the wars with the U.S. in 1991 and 2003. Syria's Bashar al-Assad did not retaliate for Israel's destruction of his clandestine Al-Kabir nuclear reactor in 2007. That reactor, by the way, was made for Syria by North Korea. Nor did he retaliate, nor did Syria retaliate for U.S. destruction of Bashar al-Assad's Barja chemical biological weapons complex in 2018. So psychopaths of the past and today have been disarmed successfully by U.S. military strikes without their escalation. Now, I don't want to pretend that denuclearizing North Korea forcibly is not without its risks. denuclearizing North Korea forcibly is very risky. The United States should be prepared to respond to North Korean use of weapons of mass destruction, including with nuclear strikes by the United States, to destroy the regime if that becomes necessary. If North Korea does the insane thing and starts using chemical or biological or nuclear weapons, we should be prepared to escalate to the use of nuclear weapons ourselves to destroy their regime if necessary. But I think it's a good bet that Kim Jong-un will want to survive, and he will know better than to do that. After all, if we take out the nuclear weapons that threaten the United States, or even the U.S. allies, we're only taking out a small part of his military capabilities. He'll still have one of the largest armies in the world. He'll still have one of the largest tank armies in the world. He'll still have an air force with which to protect his regime and to maintain his power. Living with a nuclear-armed North Korea, surrendering to mutual assured destruction with Kim Jong-un is reckless and surely will end by killing millions of Americans. That is an unacceptable outcome. If North Korea defies denuclearization successfully, nuclear-armed Iran is next, I promise you. Tehran on March 18, 2019, announced Russia is going to build them 2 more nuclear reactors. Why does Tehran, one of the world's biggest oil producers in the world, even need nuclear reactors? Clearly, Tehran, the Iranians, are looking to the North Korean example. They see North Korea getting away with a nuclear weapons program that is being used to successfully blackmail the West. And they are following the North Korean example and clandestinely building a nuclear program that may be on a par with North Korea's in its sophistication, including with nuclear missiles that we don't even know about, like the Shahab-3 and the ability to orbit satellites. So we need to disarm North Korea, including by military forces if necessary, for the sake of our grandchildren and our children and ourselves. Because no one knows if North Korea is allowed to remain a nuclear missile state that can reach the United States with nuclear weapons, that is allowed to be armed with nuclear missiles that can blast our cities, and satellites that can do an EMP attack, that could destroy all of North America, the electronic infrastructures and critical infrastructures that make life possible in all of North America. That is not an acceptable option. We will not live with that in the long run. It seems a certainty that the path of negotiation will fail. We must be prepared to disarm a nuclear-armed North Korea militarily if necessary. If we fail to do that, not only will North Korea one day strike us, but Iran will also continue along its path of becoming a nuclear missile power. It's probably already a nuclear missile power. It might come out of the closet even sooner and begin blackmailing us too, just the way North Korea is. That's something that we can't survive. The time is now, before North Korea builds more nuclear missiles, before they orbit more satellites, which would make it irreversible that we will be forced to accept a mutual assured destruction, mad relationship with nuclear-armed North Korea. My friends, I don't think we would survive a future like that. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Pry Report.